Today I'm going to give my player 3 awesome new abilities. He's going to learn to swim because I'm tired of watching him run at the bottom of lakes. I'll teach him how to talk so he can interact with the locals. And he's going to learn to fly so he can jump off high cliffs without falling to his death. This is my third devlog about my open world game called Nightstones, and I'm ready to make something amazing. Before we jump in, I wanted to point out a few things I fixed because of your feedback. I really appreciate all the rad and helpful comments you guys leave, so please keep them coming. In the first episode, a lot of you cool peeps noticed that I was incorrectly putting the player ghost behind the player instead of in front of him. The player ghost is what the camera follows for smooth camera movement, and obviously it's way more important to see where you are going rather than where you have been, so I'm honestly kind of embarrassed I didn't notice this mistake myself. It took me a while to get the camera movement right because I struggled to smoothly move the camera. The player quickly changed directions, but I got there in the end and I'm really happy with this change. Another area of improvement were the trails on the terrain. The best comment I read about this said it looks like somebody spray painted the trail on the ground, which is actually pretty fair criticism, so I modified the terrain shader. Again, I think this is my 5th major modification already. I added some noise and sharpness to the trail edge. This looks so much better, so seriously thanks to everyone who talked trash about the spray painted trails. I stare at this game way too long to have any sense of objectivity at this point, so I appreciate your help. Lastly, I wanted to mention that I pushed back the Steam release to October, after some of you showed some surprise with a June release date. And you're right, the schedule was aggressive, so I have pushed back the release date to a date I can hit. There's a link to the Steam page in the description, and I hate to ask, but if you could wishlist it, that would be the best possible way to help me, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for your consideration. Now it's time to make the player more awesome, but before I get him swimming, talking, and flying, I want to make a few changes to improve his overall look and feel. So far in these devlogs, you've seen me doing things I'm pretty comfortable with since I have an engineering background. Well, today you get to watch me struggle with my artistic skills. So I'll open up Blender, which is my preferred program for modeling and animating. First thing I want to change is the color of the player's clothes. I want him to really pop against the background a little more. I'll do this by modifying the UV map of the player. The term UV mapping used to really scare me until I understood it and realized all it is a 2D graph, no different than the X and Y graphs we all made in middle school. In fact, the only reason it's called a UV map instead of an XY map is because X, Y, and Z are already taken to define the 3D position of the model, and W is taken for the rotation. So a UV map gets its name from the next 2 letters available, U and V. And why we are going backwards in the alphabet is beyond my understanding, but wasn't that a cool story? Anyway, the UV map is used to map points from a 2D texture onto a 3D object. And here's what the 2D texture for this player looks like. One way I could change the player's color is to modify the texture itself, like bring this texture into Photoshop, make it black and white, and import it back into Unity, and now my player is also black and white. But switching textures during game rendering takes time, so I try to limit the number of textures in my game. So I'll modify the UV map instead. So after playing around a bit, I'd like to go with this color scheme. Some people may criticize me for copying the colors of Link from Legend of Zelda, but that's ridiculous. See how Link has long sleeves and my player has short sleeves? This is totally different, and I was in no way inspired by that Triforce wearing imposter. Next thing I'll do is change my player's hair. The current hair looks awesome zoomed in, but from a typical camera angle view, it just looks like a mess of triangles. So I modeled this hair, which is basically a sphere with a spiky wave thing going on in front. I was drawn to the original character because his spiky hair reminded me of Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, so I wanted to keep that connection. The majority of the UV map will be mapped to a blonde hair color, but I'll move some of the vertices to a darker brown to break up the coloring a bit. And what the heck, I'll add some bones to the hair so I can make it flow in the wind while the player is running, jumping, and flying. I'll import this model back into Unity, and yeah, this is looking better. But this dude still looks a little lifeless, and I think it's the eyes. I tried a bunch of different ideas in Blender, but never really got anything that I liked any better. So back in Unity, I'm going to add a little coroutine that fires off at random times and blinks the player's eyes to bring a little life to them. I don't think I'm totally pleased with the results, but it's a move in the right direction, and I reserve the right to continue to improve them later on. Now let's talk swimming. One of the reasons my player doesn't know how to swim is he doesn't even know what water is. Which makes sense since the water is really just this cube that I'm shading only the top of. So from the player's perspective, there is no water. So how do I fix this? The answer is ray casting. A ray cast is a straight line where I define where the ray starts, the direction it travels, and the distance it travels. I can define what the ray can and cannot hit. So I put all the water features on a separate layer. I'll call it water since I'm not very creative. And then I cast a ray from the player's head to his feet. If the ray hits the water, then I know the player is in water. The ray also gives me the distance to contact, and I can use this to determine how deep the player is in the water. If it's just his feet, I'll place some ripple particles and change the sound of his footsteps to tiny splashes. But if the water is up to his shoulders, he needs to start swimming. I updated the player's animator controller to add states for swimming and treading water, and here's what that looks like. Sweet. From the previous episodes, you know I turned myself inside out trying to make the water in this world as awesome as possible, and it's really cool to get to bathe in its glory now. Next, I'm going to show you how I got the player talking, and I really think you'll like this. If you're enjoying the videos and want to follow the game's progress, it would mean a lot to me if you could give me a like and a subscribe. While you do that, I'm going to go take the kids for a quick walk. Nightstones is a story-driven game. You're a young man who just moved into a new home for just you and your dog when you find yourself stuck in your own dream. You'll need to find the Oracle's journal so you can finish the portal that brings you home. But you know I'm not going to make it that easy on you, and I'm going to break your heart along the way with some killer plot twists. But stories need words, and words means talking. So today's the day to really bring this story to life. The dialogue system I'm going to use for my game is called Yarn Spinner, and it's a free and open source project. Yarn Spinner was originally used for a game called Night in the Woods, which is a pretty rad story-driven game in its own right. The game developer has since made this system available for others to use, which is pretty freaking cool of these guys. If you've ever written a play before, you'll understand how to write yarn scripts. You put the actors' names first, then a colon, then what the actor says, then the next actor's name, colon, and their response. I'll add some custom features like an appearance typewriter effect and a text box that I'll move to be above whoever is talking. Alright, let's write up a quick interaction with this mouse you'll encounter right when you start the game. And this looks okay, but it's kind of difficult to tell who is talking, even though the bubble tail is moving between the two characters. So I'll offset the bubble to be closer to whoever is talking, and I think that looks much better. So this all went really smooth, but this endeavor took a nasty little delay. When I wanted to add a sound clip to the dialogue, all I wanted to do was to get a beep sound and change its pitch based upon the letter of the alphabet that was being displayed. And that part went smoothly, but finding the correct beep sound tested my sanity. I typically use Audio Jungle to get my sounds, and I swear I must have tried 50 different beeps. In English, I decided to learn how to use a synthesizer to make my own beep, but wow, what even is this thing? Where's the play button? I'm typically fearless when it comes to learning something new, but a synthesizer is obviously way smarter than I am. After some digging, I found this simplified synthesizer on itch.io I could get my head around called Chiptone, and I was able to make this beep that I liked. I dropped this into my dialogue system and yeah, my player's talking, baby. Now I can really start writing this story. Last thing today, getting the player to fly. It's not an ability the player starts with, but something he'll pick up later on with the help of the owls. Regardless, I wanted to develop the mechanic early to be sure the player can't fly off the map anywhere during gameplay. I thought through a couple concepts for flight. There's the Fortnite dangling feet paraglider method, or I could have had him straight up Peter Pan it, but finally I settled on a hang glider approach. Like I said, I'm no artist, but I can copy someone else's work with the best of them. And I found this flying machine designed by Leonardo da Vinci in 1488, and I thought its old school cool would fit well with the game. Also, since the design is over 500 years old, I figured good old Leo would be cool if I used it in my game. But I didn't consult any intellectual property lawyers about this, so if you run into Leonardo da Vinci's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandkid on the street, let's keep this between us, cool? I thought it'd be cool if I used the wood beams and thatch roof of his house to build a glider, so I copied their look into a custom Blender model. And if I'm going to have the player's hair waving in the wind, I better make the glider do the same. So I rigged the model and created a little animation to add the sense of movement while this thing rips through the air. I brought all this back into Unity and it all worked perfectly without any bugs the very first time. So like I said, it all worked perfectly right away, and flying around this world is nothing short of amazing. This will be a sweet mechanic I think I'll always enjoy playing with. It totally beats walking. Okay, that does it for today. Thanks for watching the third Nightstones devlog. I'm pumped to show you some rad new updates on the next episode. Until then, later Nightstoners. Nope. Oh no, that doesn't work either. I'll get the outro right by like the 100th episode. Until then, thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for watching.